I chose a man called David. He certainly drew the curtains and enabled me to discover who I was and what I was here to do in this life, I suppose. The place that I'm thinking of, it doesn't sound particularly likely, the Sutton Caulfield Park. But the thing about Sutton Caulfield is that it has this extraordinary park of several thousand acres of marsh and woodland and lakes and grassland.
May I ask you, what was your treasured possession? What did you choose?
So I've chosen this. There are 4 small, little rings, and each one has a name written on it. So there is one deer, that's my wife. There's Kevo, it's my first son. There's Kai, my young son, and there's Roman, my stepson.
Hello, and welcome back to These 3 Things, the podcast that asks which person, place, and treasured possession have made a profound impact upon your life and why. My next guest is Mac Macartney. He is a writer, visionary, teacher, thought leader, and internationally renowned and respected speaker. He has over 30 years' experience in people and organization development, but he is highly regarded as a prominent role model for the best of inspiring masculinity. Alongside his extensive experience of working with organizations, he also founded Embercombe, a social enterprise located in Devon, which seeks to explore and promote the profound regeneration of land, society, and people. Guided by his visions for a healed earth and healed humanity living harmoniously in context to the earth. I first met Mac and studied with him in lockdown whilst attending the online course A Mighty Heart, directed by the mighty Dr. Cilla Elworthy. Mac was a visiting tutor. I had read his second book, The Children's Fire, Heart Song of a People, and I was hooked. He tells a story of a journey, a pilgrimage, that he took in the winter of 2009. Mac set off from his birthplace in England and walked the Isle of Anglesey. He completed the journey by navigating the stars, with no map, no tent, and no stove. And what he found along the way was a truth both precious and painful. I cannot recommend this book highly enough. Having heard him speak more recently at Medicine Festival here in the UK, I approached Mac, asking him to be a guest on These 3 Things, and I'm happy to say that he did not hesitate. And so it is my honour and privilege to welcome him as a guest today on These 3 Things. Thank you so much, Mac, for saying yes. Let me start by asking you, as I do all of our guests, how easy was it for you to choose your list?
In one way, it wasn't easy because I'm spoilt for choice. There have been so many places, so many people, and so many objects. So I can't say that what I'm going to share today is necessarily the person, place, and object, because I don't think there's really any kind of hierarchy amongst them. But I have chosen 3 that are and were profound, and I think worthy of sharing.
Lovely. I agree. I think so many people especially warrant that list. But as I say to everyone that comes on, it's not the person that we love the most, but that person that woke us up in some way and really got us closer to our own truth. So let's start there. Who did you choose and why?
Well, I chose a man called David. David is still alive, though he has terminal cancer, but he's had terminal cancer now for quite a long time. He tells me that every few years they invent some new drug which keeps him alive for another few years. So he's now my age, he's 75, and he's still drinking red wine and enjoying life. But he was a Lloyd's underwriter. So this is in the Lloyd's of London insurance market. and had a reputation for two things. One of those was that he was a man of utmost integrity, and that this was resonant through his whole career, and reputation was built upon that. Plus the other quality, which was he had some uncanny and extraordinary ability to be able to spot a good risk. And so as soon as David agreed to add his scratch, his signature, to a percentage of a risk, all the others would be queuing up behind to try and get a little bit of this business, because it was, as you know, if he signed it, that was good enough. So that's David. But the thing is, he had a little business, and one day somehow or other found my business and me, and came along, and we had some brief encounter, and during it they asked me something which I don't specialize in, but I said, look, I'll give you this, but you probably find other people much better at this than me. And he said, okay. And then he finished the interview with, well, what do you like doing? And I said, all our work is around vision and culture and enabling a client to meet their business goals whilst also in some way or other really bringing their values to the forefront. This was many years ago. I'm not in that field anymore. And he said, all right then, so we're very small. We think we're going to make a huge commercial success. And this is during the time that Lloyd's of London market was imploding. And our tiny little underwriting agency will then sell for a vast amount of money, and we'll be very rich. So I said, okay, that's good. And 5 years later, they sold it to Warren Buffett, and they made a fortune. And then he came to me and he said, we are rich beyond our dreams. But to be honest, we already were pretty wealthy. So you can buy a second helicopter if you want, or you can buy another yacht, or you can buy this and buy that, but it all feels a bit predictable and boring. And I wonder if we could work together around what makes a meaningful life. And for the first time ever, I revealed to him my work with Indigenous people. And we went off to the mountains of Snowdonia, and there we did a ceremony. And when we got back, he said, I want to thank you for that and everything you've done for our business. Do you have a dream? And I had a dream when I was about 22 years old. And it was a valley in which there were a lot of tears and a lot of laughter. A valley in which people were inspired and awoken to the beauty of this earth. A valley where people would find their courage and choose to go out into the world and do everything they could to bring their gifts forward and add another little piece to, as it were, a better world. And he said, that's a wonderful vision. What do you need? And I said, I need the valley. And he wrote a check that bought 50 acres of Devon, gave it to me and said, well, now you can live that dream. And that's where I'm speaking to you now. I'm in my cabin in the valley of Embercombe, not far from Exeter, on the edge of Dartmoor. And this is the longest I've been in any one place, really. And I love this valley. I love the footpaths, the trees, the birds, the badgers, the foxes, the otter that's visited our lake a couple of times, the people. And so David Mann is the person who made that possible.
And I have to ask, has David Mann been to Embercombe and seen it in its full fruition?
Well, for a number of years, we decided to put the land into a charitable trust, and David was the chair of the trustees. At a certain point, he withdrew from that role, and he has continued up until probably 10 years ago to make donations to enable us to do our work. But for the last 10 years, he hasn't been. And I spoke to him just recently and said, David, I'd love you to come. We're both getting older, and I'd love you to come before it becomes too difficult. And he said, Mac, I just don't want to come and people, then I have to deal with people asking me for things and, money maybe, whatever. And I said, David, there's nobody here who even knows what you look like anymore. So I can just call you by your second name, and nobody will know. And you'll be able to walk completely, incognito amongst the people and the woods and the meadows of this land, and it'll be fine. So I am hoping that he will come either sometime in this late summer, autumn, or maybe next May, June time. We'll see.
That's so wonderful. And could you tell me a little bit more about the nature of your relationship together? What did he teach you about yourself?
I'm not sure if he taught me, but he certainly drew the curtains and enabled me to discover who I was and what I was here to do in this life, I suppose. And I think the gift was so huge. And I felt so utterly lost, actually, once I arrived here, because I was on my own in a 50-acre sort of small estate, as it were, with a 14th century thatched cottage, an airstrip, 2 aircraft hangars, 20 acres of woods, a lake with trout in and all these things. And it was utterly beautiful. But, how did I move from that to an organization that was really making a difference in the world? I think it's because I felt such a debt of gratitude to this wonderful man that I had to stick with it and do my utmost and in fact succeed. And actually it was about 10 years ago, he said to me, I just want you to know, Mac, that if you feel the need to withdraw from Embercombe, walk away from it and do something else in your sort of whatever we call it, last quarter or whatever of my life, I want you to know that you owe me nothing, that it's been the best money I've ever spent, and you're free to just, without any debt, to just do whatever you like. And I said, David, it makes me very happy to hear you say that, but I have no desire to leave this place, and I'll stay with it for as long as I believe that we can eventually find this sweet spot where, the vision and the values and the mission is alive and strong. We've got our feet on the ground and we can pay our bills and do that well. And we are engaging with all kinds of spectrums of society, and put our hand on our hearts really and say we know that this is having a profoundly good impact in the world, and that people here in the valley are not overworked and just, as it were, sucked dry, but they are thriving themselves in the delivery of that work. And truthfully, I'd say we haven't achieved the fullness of that yet. I think we're on track. And so I'm hoping that the day will come when I'll be able to sort of, bring out my chair and sit down and think, I think that looks pretty good. And it will, of course, be handed on to others, as indeed in many ways it already is.
Can I ask you, Mac, for the listener who's not acquainted yet with Embercombe and what it stands for and what it offers visitors, would you just give them an overview?
Yes. So let me begin at this place. We are rewilding our land. There was a time when we were growing a lot of food. It was like a small holding. And those were wonderful times as well, and produced an awful lot of food, and really good food as well. And there were many volunteers here, and the place was humming with music and activity, and all kinds of people loving the fact that they would spend some time, months or whatever, living here. But I think it became clear that the effort that it cost us, as it were, to operate this as a small holding whilst also designing and running all the programs from the trustees' point of view and my point of view, it was too much. We was far too much activity that was failing to generate any kind of surplus. And, we needed to become more single focused and less endlessly busy simply in standing still, if I can put it that way. So we decided to let go of the food growing, not because we don't think that that's a wonderful thing to do, but simply because the food growing on our land was all about anyone coming on programs would spend some of the time out on the land. And that typically would be assisting or working outside in some of the areas, growing areas. But it works just as well if the land is wilding, and now we're more focused at all the brambles which are providing cover for the rabbit warren that we have here. The badger trails where we can see that they're eating the blackberries and all of that. The deer, the small number of deer we have on the land, because outside our fence is an enormous population of deer, too many for the good of the forest here. And the whole life of this valley, the more than human life, is just going through the roof. It's exploding, and it's wonderful. There are grass snakes. There's the whole thing is just terrific. Why is this that important to us? It's very important because it people, when they come here, they walk into this small piece of land that is very loved, very cared for, and is not just heart but also head. So a lot of thought, a lot of knowledge, a lot of expertise is put into this as well. And then the humans come in, and what this says is this land can have quite an intense footfall of people, and at the same time the wildlife can thrive, and that we belong together. We are part of nature. And so for many of them, they will hear the dawn chorus as they sleep in their yurts on the hillside here as they look towards Dartmoor. They will walk these little paths at night with their torch as they're heading back to their place of sleeping. They will eat communally in our dining yurt, as it were, of food that is nutritious and good and made with love, all these good things. And at the same time, they will go through our program. The programs are all about deepening into relationship with self, deepening into relationship with others, deepening into relationship with nature, which is really life, and coming to the full realization that these lives don't really mean very much unless the way our activity in the world is in some way giving to current and future generations of human and more than human. but there's no prescription from us on what that should look like. So if that's a business that is just doing, bringing a wonderful product in some way, assuming that it's a product that is life affirming and not costing the earth, as it were. If it's a songwriter, and that they're deciding to write songs that will inspire rather than necessarily about their latest failed relationship, or or the grower, or the teacher, or the scientist, or the activist, or the out of work. It doesn't matter. Rich, on the breadline, wherever we can find people who just simply understand that we're living at an extraordinary period in our human and global history. And this is not a time for standing on the sidelines. It's a time for is asking those questions. What is mine to give? And then, screwing up our courage, as it were, and stepping out there, equipping ourselves in whatever way, and making available the gifts that we have in some way or other.
Thank you. That was so articulate and beautifully put. And that line that you just mentioned, what is mine to give? And I think back to that initial meeting of you and David, or certainly when he called to let you know the success of his sale. And there it is. That's something that we can all wake up with every day. That simple line. What is mine to give today? I often say, our family mantra has been, if in doubt, give. And I think we're very aligned on that. Thank you so much. I have so enjoyed hearing about the amazing David Mann, and I really hope he visits Embercombe soon. Can I go onto your place? Can I ask you, where is Mac Macartney's special place? Where have you chosen?
Well, it's really funny, actually, because, so I never meant to really speak about Embercombe when I was talking about David Mann, but of course Embercombe came into it, so I was going to talk about Embercombe. But I'm going to make a quick switch. I think it's clear to those who listen that I love this valley, and it means a lot to me, and it's brought me a lot. But if I go back, 2 weeks ago, suddenly finding myself with a week because my wife and small son were going off to Kenya to see his grandma. I had a week. So I went back to the place where I was born, which I like to do every now and then, to Malvern and the Malvern Hills, and particularly the Iron Age hill fort there. I went from there to where my father's ashes were scattered, because I do not feel that I really properly said goodbye to that rather wonderful man when he died when I was 22, because I was almost entirely preoccupied with myself and my own life. And I don't feel particularly good about that. So I went back and I've taken some of the soil from that place, and I'm going to plant a tree for him. And this time I'll do it properly, and I have a lot to thank him for. So I did that. I went to the school that I spent quite a long time and found the little cherry tree that when I was there in my teens was like 1 meter high, just been planted, and found it now something like 60 odd years old, and a full grown cherry tree, and sat once again by it after more than half a century, and remembered again a lot of the pain and the joy, the friendships, the hardships, everything, and moved on. The place that I'm thinking of is a place, it doesn't sound particularly likely, the place Sutton Caulfield Park. Now, Sutton Caulfield is 7 miles north of Birmingham, and it's not everybody's, it wouldn't sound to everybody like the most wonderful place. But first of all, we're going back to the 50s, and Sutton Caulfield felt a million miles from the metropolis of Birmingham as it was then. Not that there's anything wrong with Birmingham, but it was the city. We lived in this small town. But the thing about Sutton Caulfield is that it has this extraordinary park of several thousand acres of marsh and woodland and lakes and grassland, and it's pretty much wild. I mean, they have Exmoor ponies grazing there now, and wild, as it were, semi-wild. And for us children, and being of that era, you know, my mum would give us breakfast, and then we'd barrel out of the door, and clad with bows and arrows and knives and, you know, all kinds of weaponry, I suppose, really, and coils of rope, we would rush down the road onto a little stony track and into the park. Now, it's several thousand acres, and my parents had no idea where we were, you know, and in those days, that was normal. And she would not expect to see us back until 5, 6 in the evening. And we would get home battered and bruised and sometimes blooded, as it were. And we would have been through all sorts of adventures. We would have climbed trees, fallen out of them, swum in lakes. We would have done everything. And I went back to that place and I walked the same paths. And I found the same magical secret places. I looked for a treasure that my dad and us three boys, he gave us this idea that we would bury this treasure in a glass jar under a holly tree. And every year we would go and try and find it again and excavate it and look at the contents. And it was so incredibly exciting. And I couldn't find it. And what was so amazing is I found out that my elder brother, who you know, has also been back trying to find it, and my younger brother has also been back trying to find it. So you've got these, I think it would be fair to say, elderly men still completely wrapped in the magic of that buried treasure, which in the end was marbles and a few coins and some stones and I don't know what. But that park, the trees, the lakes, the streams, the grasslands wrapped me in their arms. And I, together with the gardens that we had in our homes, I think I was given to nature at that time. And it was, and I have another debt of gratitude to the beauty of that extraordinary place and how privileged I am in many ways to have had the opportunity to go to such a place and be scrubbed with soil and tree bark and everything and never to forget it. So at a later time in my life, I just had this realization I'd left these things behind because I somehow thought, and I think I was encouraged to think, that they were childish. And then I just thought, I don't care, because they are what I love. I fell in love with nature first and people a rather late second because they're rather more complicated. And I think probably last in that list was myself, because I think that is another really crucial thing is coming to a loving relationship with yourself, knowing the wholeness of who you are and how imperfect that is. And yet somehow, you know, smilingly embracing it and saying, it's okay. It's who I am. And it's not over till it's over. And I am here to learn and grow and attempt to become a more trustworthy, peaceful, and caring human being.
Well, I'm often rendered speechless in a lot of these episodes, and this is one of those times. I'm going to ask you one question about Sutton Caulfield Park. Please tell me that it hasn't been gentrified in any way. It's still wild, it's still rambling, it's still as it was.
Not quite as it was, an awful lot more people, uh, more retail, more like, the odd little restaurant or something popped in there, a few more cars. Essentially, it's the same. There is one very jarring thing, I think, though I understand why they've done it. There is still one of the lakes you can swim in, but you used to be able to swim in any of them. And there was one called Bracebridge, which we particularly loved because there's an island in the middle of the lake, and you could swim out to the island and climb onto the island. It just felt really, really special. Now there's a big notice saying no bathing, because of the Exmoor ponies and the possibility, I suppose, of transmitted disease or something. And I did find that because I just remembered as a small child the joy of pitching up there, ripping your clothes off, pulling on your trunks, and just diving into that water was so special. The very fact that it wasn't a regular swimming pool or a regular anything, it was just a lake, and that's a shame. Nonetheless, I saw lots of people enjoying themselves.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. And I have a really distinct vision of you, brothers and friends, sort of clambering back at 5 o'clock, ready for a really big feed, and your mum just not batting an eyelid, thinking, oh, here they come, the troops. And then you go to sleep and you're off again the next day to do it all over again. Oh, good old days. How special. That's been wonderful to hear. And I hope that you get to take your son there as well one day, just to.
Yes, he was outraged that I hadn't taken him with me, and especially because I did take my dog, Ted. And so while I was down memory lane, Ted was entirely in the present, and it was quite helpful, really. But I am going to take my little boy, probably my wife as well, and we will have some adventures. And, of course, most importantly, we'll bury some treasure.
I was just about to say that you have to find that treasure spot for him in the generations to come. How lovely. Okay, well, on that treasure, may I ask you, what was your treasure possession? What did you choose?
Yes, so I've chosen this. So it's a leather thong, and there are 4 small little metal. I'm not sure whether they are pewter or something like that, like little rings on this leather thong, and each one has a name written on it. So there is one deer, that's my wife. There's Kevo, it's my first son. There's Kai, my young son. And there's Roman, my stepson. Now, I have not been, if you like, really, through my life, very much of a family man. I've had extraordinary adventures, and I've taken things to the limit in many different ways, right to the borderlands of sometimes quite dangerous experience, I suppose. But I met my wife like 13 years ago, and at that point, as I said, I'm 75 now. I had not had a child of mine. Though I had, with some previous couple of partners, I had been, as it were, a father figure to the children. So we met, and And we are really different, you know. If I had a list, which though I don't think I ever, I'm glad to say this, I'd be too embarrassed, but I never wrote down a list, but I think there was a list in me about the attributes and qualities of the woman that I would choose to share my life with. I have had, you know, lovers, partners, if you like, that have embodied those gifts or those qualities. But in many ways, Wandia does not conform to that list. But with her, I've been the happiest I've been with anyone. She's not that engaged in my work. When I get through the door, she doesn't ask me particularly what I've been doing. She usually asks me, what I'm cooking for tonight's dinner, say, or would I go and do this task, or that Kai's been wanting to go out and play football with me for, We laugh a lot, we play a lot, we enjoy each other's company. And I am so grateful to have a home life and a family life, since so much of my time and work is, on all kinds of other things which take me in a sense away from family. So that's Wandia. When we got together, she had a son, Kevo, and I suppose Kevo is also a stepson, but I never think of him as my stepson. I never refer to him as my stepson. When we first got together and began to think maybe we could try and make this work and do this thing, and I said, no, Wandia said to me, Mac, there is no future for us if it doesn't include Kevo. And he was 12 years old, And I said, no, of course, I absolutely want, Kevo has a place, because I get an instant family, and I'm absolutely delighted about that. And I love that boy, so that's great. The question for me is, how does he feel about having me as a father figure? And she said, well, let me tell you, when he came back from school after your last visit and you went back to the UK, because we met in Kenya, I asked him, what do you think about Mac, Kevo? And he took off his school tie, pulled it inside out, and inside he'd written Kevo Macartney.
Oh, wow. I could cry.
Yeah. And he's called me Dad ever since he first met me. So I am his dad, and I will never call him my stepson. He's my son, and I love him very much. And he's out there living a life which is very different from mine, and I don't, I just want him to live his life. And he's a very kind and dutiful and generous young man. He's now 26, and he got a, from going to a comprehensive school in Newton Abbot and being one of almost the only black child in the school, which is quite something. He survived fine. He did fine. Failed to get into the sixth form because I realized his entire effort was trying to work out how he fitted in and learnt about UK youth culture. Went to Exeter College, became student of the year, got a place at Leeds University, got a first in computer science, and he's now got an apartment in Paddington and is on a supersonic trajectory of a successful life, whilst still being a very kind and trustworthy, honest, good young man.
What a lad. I mean, good on him. And I bet he's a gorgeous elder brother to little one. How old is Kai, may I ask?
Kai is 7.
Okay.
And they love each other.
I bet.
They absolutely love each other. They have calls every week. And it is so glorious for me because with the age difference, of course, I know that Kai will have his elder brother there for him when I die. So
Yes.
I'm delighted.
Yes, I can relate to that. My daughter has an amazing older brother who's coming up to 20, and he's in Surrey, and she is in Wales with me, but he looks out and protects her and makes her laugh like no one else. So I understand that bond. It's so precious. And also you mentioned a stepson.
Well, yes, I did. So then I have another stepson. His name is Roman, and he's now 28. And I held him. My previous marriage. He's genetically not my son, but I held him when he was a few months old as a baby, and he lived in our home as my stepson for many years at Embercombe. And in his teens, he went to go and live with his dad, his biological dad, in London, who's also a friend of mine, and then he ended up in some really difficult circumstances, which were quite dangerous, both for him and possibly for others. And the thing is with him is when he was smallest child, I remember seeing him square up to his mum and his father, telling them that he was a soldier. And they answered by laughing at him and saying, "No, you're not a soldier. You're going to do well at school. You're going to go to whatever. You're going to get qualified, and you're going to." And he was adamant. It wasn't that he wanted to be, but that he was a soldier. And so that's what he is. He's in elite special forces soldier, going on small group missions. He leads a team of 4, and he's doing some of the most dangerous work that one could imagine, and is now seemingly going to move into the very highest sort of group where they go on the most extraordinary kind of work. And of course, we don't get to hear an awful lot of what he does, and we might not even want to know what he does. But I can only say that that boy could not find in our society the fierce rite of passage that he really wanted. He was just made that way, and he's very kind. He's very loving. He's very generous. He's very loyal, and asked to be married here in Embercombe about a year ago to the young woman that he met when he was volunteering here, and he was, and he also said to me one day when I finished doing what I'm doing, "Do you think I could come back and perhaps learn about the earth wisdom teachings and everything?" So you have this incredible sort of, about as wide as it can get between choices he's made about his career and the depth of his heart. That is, I would say, really wonderful. So I don't have the time here, but I wrote him a letter when he made this choice. And it was really just saying, I will never try and dissuade you from doing what you want to do. I will only ask you, what kind of soldier will you be? And if there was ever a time when you were given a command that ran contrary to what you knew in your heart to be right, which of those 2 leaders would you follow? And some various other things. And he's kept that letter. he carries it with him. And he carries a ring which I gave him, which has Pictish writing on it, which says, translated, blessings on the soul. I love him very much. And so that's Rome. And then that brings us to the little boy. And he's he's an extremely passionate and wonderful little person. He's got a very strong point of view about most things, and he's extremely funny. He's very bright, and he comes out with the most amazing things. So to give you an example, 2 nights ago, I was tucking him up in bed. He'd brushed his teeth and all that sort of thing, gone to bed. He'd arranged these stones that he's gathered by his bedside. He's got one he calls his moonstone. Another one, much to the consternation of the person that gave it to him, he calls it Apocalypse. Yeah. The other one he calls Orbit. And we were just there, and he said, Dada. I said, yes. What's up? He said, Dada, I'm really nervous. I said, what are you nervous about? He said, I'm really nervous about my driving test. He's 7 years old. He's really nervous about his driving test. Yes. Oh, my goodness. I just I realized I needed to take it seriously. So I did. And I just, you know what? We've got plenty of time to practice.
Oh, I love it. Well, I have a 6-year-old, so I can really relate to the bedtime chat, and the humor is just priceless.
Yes.
There's such bright lights and strong opinions. Yes, I can relate to that as well. So this necklace that you carry around your heart with these 4 beautiful rings, was that gifted to you by your wife, or is that something that you've made?
It was. It was gifted by my wife, including the one for Roman. And it was on another cord, but I noticed that was getting rather frayed. I didn't want to lose them, so I've recently put it on this thong, and and I would think of it really, Deborah, as this sort of balancing between my work out in the world, whether it's speaking or running programs or whatever it might happen to be, writing, and then the fact of my home, and that home is really important to me and can't be sacrificed on the altar of this so-called important work in the world. It is important work in the world, but it's not more important than embracing my wife, thanking her for cooking that food, playing football with that little boy, or checking in with Kevo in London, or calling, my Roman. They are a kind of pivot around which everything else operates.
Yes, the cornerstones, that make you wake up each day. Well, Mac Macartney, I can't thank you enough. This has been a wish come true for me. So to David Mann, to Sutton Caulfield Park, and to the lovely leather necklace with the 4 rings that you wear close to your heart every day, I hope you've enjoyed being a guest on These 3 Things.
I have very much indeed. Thank you so much for inviting me.
And there we have it. A huge thank you to you, our listener. We are growing our community and kindly ask that you be a valued link in this chain. For These 3 Things to exist and continue, we need you to please press subscribe or follow now. You can do this on your preferred podcast platform. We will keep you updated on all our community news, and you'll be the first to catch all new episodes. A rating or thoughtful review is greatly appreciated and helps others to find our show. Thank you for tuning in and being a part of our treasured community.